Debates in strike aviation are too often reduced to a simple contrast: expensive stealth bombers versus cheap drones. It's an effective formula for presentations, but the real transformation's taking place in a far more prosaic setting. There, where rows of gray transport giants stand, C-130, C-17, C-5, aircraft that for decades carried cargo rather than delivering strikes. It's precisely in the world of standardized pallets, strict procedures, and flawless logistics that an idea emerges that sounds almost sacrilegious. If a transport aircraft can accurately airdrop equipment in containers, why not drop a ready-made module with cruise missiles? Rapid Dragon is not just a smart container, it's a bridge between two systems that have rarely intersected. On one side, transport aviation with its volume, rhythm, and scale. On the other, strike platforms limited in number, expensive to integrate, and critically dependent on infrastructure. The concept does not propose replacing bombers, but rather a different approach, turning the existing fleet of aircraft into a reserve of strategic firepower. In the era of standoff strikes, what matters is not maneuvering or speed, but the mass of the salvo and the ability to rapidly increase the number of launch platforms. Rapid Dragon shifts the emphasis, making power scalable, flexible, and based not on a handful of golden platforms, but on a logistical foundation that's long been built. In the next few minutes, we'll examine whether this concept is truly capable of changing the balance of power, turning transport aviation into a strategic reserve of firepower, or whether Rapid Dragon will remain an impressive but niche tool suitable only for very specific scenarios. If we look at Rapid Dragon not as a flashy video of a missile launch from a cargo aircraft, but as a military concept, it immediately becomes clear that this is not a sudden technological leap, but another iteration of a long familiar logic. Once again, the military's trying to turn an existing mass platform into a carrier of an unconventional combat effect, quickly, cheaply, and without years of tedious aircraft modifications, or even more so, the enormously expensive development of an entirely new system. The idea of converting a transport aircraft into a strike weapons carrier is almost as old as jet aviation itself. The first attempts to implement this concept were made back in the 1960s during the Vietnam War. It was then that the United States created the famous flying artillery batteries, the Douglas AC-47 Spooky, and later the Lockheed AC-130 Spectre, which became prototypes of armed transport aircraft. They were equipped with side-mounted machine guns and cannons capable of delivering continuous fire against ground targets. However, this was more of an improvisation. Effective, yes, but still niche. The gunship concept solved a specific task of supporting ground forces, but it didn't turn a transport aircraft into a strategic strike player. Whatever the case, these were short-range aircraft whose effectiveness directly depended on the absence of serious enemy air defenses. Nevertheless, this did not prevent the C-130 from becoming a symbol of flexibility, not only a truck, but a family of platforms on which the United States had solved a wide range of missions for decades, from cargo transport and aerial refueling to special operations. One of the most illustrative examples of using transport aircraft as weapons platforms was the BLU-82B weapons system, known as the Daisy Cutter, developed under the Commando Vault program. It was created as a replacement for dwindling stocks of older 10,000-pound M121 bombs used to clear helicopter landing zones approximately 260 feet in diameter in dense Vietnamese vegetation. The BLU-82B was a large, thin-walled container with quarter-inch steel plates filled with 12,600 pounds of explosive mixture. This enormous munition could only be carried by transport aircraft. C-130 crews dropped it using a standard cargo parachute extraction system, and the delivery scheme was not significantly different from ordinary cargo procedures. In other words, it wasn't necessary to turn the transport aircraft into a classic bomber with hard points, targeting pods, and deep weapons integration. Sometimes it's enough to use its natural strength, the ability to safely airdrop heavy cargo by parachute. Of course, this was a completely different class of destruction and level of accuracy, but the very principle of combat effect through cargo architecture proved workable. During the Cold War, emphasis was placed on specialized platforms. Strategic bombers such as the Boeing B-52 Stratofortress Rockwell B-1 Lancer, and Northrop B-2 Spirit. In the context of superpower confrontation, aircraft capable of penetrating layered air defense systems were required, which made a cargo aircraft extremely vulnerable in such a scenario. However, after the end of the Cold War, interest in heavy bombers partially declined, and military campaigns of the 1990s and 2000s, from Yugoslavia to Iraq and Afghanistan, were conducted under conditions of almost complete air superiority. Therefore, transport aircraft were indeed used in unconventional roles, including the delivery of guided munitions, albeit within experimental frameworks. Take the GBU-43B Massive Ordnance Air Blast, MOAB, also known as the mother of all bombs. It was an extremely powerful bomb developed by the Air Force Research Laboratory. It also secured the title of the largest satellite-guided air-delivered weapon in history and the most powerful non-nuclear weapon in the U.S. arsenal at the time of its development. MOAB was an improved replacement for the BLU-82 and operated on a similar principle, with an even more impressive explosive weight of 18,700 pounds compared to 12,600 pounds in its predecessor. The bombs were designed for launch from the C-130 and mounted on a specially designed cradle. After extraction from the aircraft with a braking parachute, the cradle separated and the bomb guided itself toward the target using the KMU-593B GPS-INS system, stabilized by fixed wings and grid fins. Of course, BLU-82B and GBU-43B cannot be called direct predecessors of Rapid Dragon. They were single, ultra-heavy munitions for specific tasks, not a multi-missile long-range strike module, but they clearly demonstrated the practicality of turning the cargo bay into a temporary weapons delivery channel without turning the C-130 into a B-52 bomber. The closest precedent in spirit to Rapid Dragon was the addition of the Marine Corps ISR Weapon Mission Kit to KC-130J Super Hercules tanker aircraft. This allowed them to perform surveillance and provide fire support to ground targets using AGM-114 Hellfire missiles, AGM-176 Griffin missiles, precision bombs, and the 30mm Mk-44 Bushmaster II cannon. The AN/AAQ-30 TSS targeting system, mounted under the external fuel tank on the left wing, included infrared and television cameras. A typical configuration consisted of 4 Hellfire missiles and 10 GPS-guided Griffin missiles. This feature was called Harvest Hawk Hercules Airborne Weapons Kit and was primarily intended for operations where pinpoint precision was not mandatory, for example, area denial missions. It allowed the aircraft to be equipped with an impressive range of capabilities while retaining its core refueling and transport functions. The system could be removed in less than a day. A similar pattern was seen with the MC-130W Dragon Spear, which was later converted into the AC-130 Stinger II. The U.S. Air Force was particularly proud of the timeline from first prototype flight to deployment, less than 18 months. These were not palletized long-range strikes like Rapid Dragon, but they reflected the same culture of rapid combat conversion in response to urgent mission needs. Thus, Rapid Dragon did not emerge out of nowhere. Moreover, today it stands at the intersection of several trends. First, the growing role of long-range strike weapons, where the cruise missile performs the main task and the carrier no longer needs to penetrate to low altitude with externally mounted weapons like fighters or bombers. Second, the shortage of specialized carriers. Even the U.S. Air Force cannot endlessly expand its bomber fleet. Meanwhile, transport C-130 and C-17 aircraft already exist in significant numbers, are familiar in operation, and integrated into logistics networks. It's precisely on them that Rapid Dragon places its emphasis. Third, preparation for conflicts where distribution of forces and complicating the enemy's targeting process are crucial. With systems like Rapid Dragon, the United States can saturate the battle space with multiple kinetic and non-kinetic effects, significantly complicating enemy targeting and opening opportunities for other forces. So what is Rapid Dragon? It's an airdropped palletized weapons module designed to launch loitering munitions, primarily cruise missiles, from U.S. Air Force cargo aircraft. The service partnered with Lockheed Martin to develop special pallets, so-called deployment boxes, representing an inexpensive method of temporarily converting unmodified cargo aircraft such as the C-130 and C-17 into long-range bombers capable of mass-launching various versions of AGM-158 JASSM, Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile, against land or maritime targets. The C-130 was chosen as the primary platform not by accident. Unlike the B-52 Stratofortress, which requires a 10,000-foot runway, the C-130 needs only 3,000 feet. Launcher sizes can be configured to carry from 4 to 45 AGM-158B JASSM-ER missiles capable of striking targets at ranges from 570 to 1,200 miles, with future prospects for the JASSM-XR extreme range with even greater capabilities. The name was inspired by a 10th century Chinese siege weapon used for volley fire, the Zhilong Che, meaning rapid dragon cart. It launched not modern missiles, of course, but large numbers of long-range crossbow bolts from a safe distance. The Rapid Dragon program began in December 2019 under the leadership of the Air Force Research Laboratory and U.S. Strategic Command, and by December 2021 it had successfully completed testing. It'll allow the United States to rapidly provide strategic strike capability to foreign military partners already equipped with conventional cargo airdrop capabilities. It'll also increase the number of locations from which cruise missile-carrying aircraft can operate and complicate enemy efforts to neutralize strike fleets by destroying fixed air bases. The operational logic is simple. A deployment box is loaded onto a standard cargo pallet, dropped like ordinary cargo, stabilized by parachute, and then sequentially releases its payload. The missiles launch one by one, stabilize, and proceed along pre-planned routes. Yes, the C-130 effectively becomes a strategic bomber, but there's no need to certify structural modifications, reroute wiring, certify new hardpoints, or spend years restructuring operations. Speed is the key to the concept's success. The most common temptation when discussing projects like Rapid Dragon is to call them cheap bombers, but the system doesn't make long-range strike inherently cheap, since the primary cost lies in the munitions, intelligence, targeting, and operational support, not merely the flight hour cost of the carrier. This is evident even in open figures. In the U.S. Air Force FY 2025 budget, 550 JASSM missiles are allocated $1.047 billion in gross weapon system cost, with a unit cost of approximately $1.904 million in FY 2025, depending on variant differences. In other words, even a single pallet salvo of dozens of missiles equals tens of millions of dollars in munitions alone. Where Rapid Dragon does provide savings is in carrier cost and availability. According to FY 2025 DoD reimbursable rates, the hourly operating cost of the C-130 and C-17A is significantly lower than that of heavy bombers or stealth platforms, approximately $10,281 for the C-130 and $19,515 for the C-17. Simply put, Rapid Dragon is not about making missiles cheaper, it's about expanding the number of launch platforms, reducing strain on limited strike aircraft fleets, and rapidly increasing salvo mass when needed. For that purpose, the system appears rational and efficient. Among its drawbacks, the need for crew and staff training, missile stockpile limitations, and protection of airfields and logistics hubs, since the enemy will prioritize strikes against munition storage and carriers, even transport aircraft, which complicates attempts to neutralize them in a single blow. Nevertheless, the most interesting aspect of Rapid Dragon is not the missile-filled deployment box itself, but the shift in thinking. The program shows that in modern warfare, the value of a platform is increasingly defined not by its inherent specialization, but by how quickly new combat roles can be loaded into it, and by its modularity. From this perspective, today, Rapid Dragon means palletized cruise missiles. Tomorrow, it could mean mixed loadouts, electronic warfare systems, unmanned systems, decoys, reconnaissance packages, or combined mission modules for each operational phase. There's no need to argue whether Rapid Dragon will replace bombers. It will not eliminate the fundamental limitations of transport aviation in contested airspace, but as a strategic force multiplier, a tool for rapidly increasing salvo mass, distributing launch capability, and relieving pressure on limited strike assets, the system is no longer exotic, but a timely adaptation to the era of long-range warfare. What do you think about systems like Rapid Dragon? Is there a place for them within the seemingly limitless cargo holds of U.S. transport aviation? Be sure to share your opinion in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to stay connected. See you soon!